Hey everybody! So today we are doing Realism Ashinikko Nail. I am taking the shading gel by Nails by Dev, and now I'm just kind of giving myself an outline for her face. There is room to work, so you want it to look as close as possible, but if there's little hints and nods out, that's fine. We can work with that. I am doing the lips and strategically working with a few different kinds of pinks, and I also added a little bit of a highlight to her one portion of her lip with a white. We are now working on more of the shading because the most important part of making a realistic looking nail is about the highlights and the shading. So for the blush, I am using kind of a sheer jelly color. And then for the shading aspects, I'm mixing some of the shading gel with the base color that I've actually applied with the whole nail. We are now working on the eyes. And the thing about eyes is that you want it to be detailed, but you also want it to be vague, especially if you're working on a little surface, just because you want as much detail as possible, but if you're adding too much detail, it'll kind of take away from it as well. So I'm going back in with the shading gel at the bottom of the neck just to kind of get an idea of where we're going with that. And now we're going back into the eyes. She has some nice winged eyeliner. I'm also adding some eyelashes to the whole set. You're making sure that we're just using very light pressure for applying that aspect because you don't want them to be thick, you want them to be thin. I'm now also going in with a little bit of that highlighting gel, also by Nails by Dev, to create some more of the highlighting aspect. We are also adding the tiniest bit of the Nails by Dev high glitter for her eyeshadow, which I should have done before I did the lashes, but you can still see the lashes with that as well. So now I'm starting to try to get an idea of how her hair is. I'm using a reference photo for her face and for her hair. So that's one of the most important parts, is always having a reference photo if you're doing realism, because unless you're the lucky person that can actually see everything in your head, then go for it, but I'm definitely not. So again, it's a lot of going back and forth because sometimes you might get bored of doing one area, so then you work on another, but it's a lot of the highlighting and shading, highlighting, shading, highlighting, shading, same thing, the hair, the face, back and forth. So we are also adding a little mix of like dense highlight with the white, and we're also adding more differentiation with the darks, because the more contrast you have, the more that the shading and the highlighting will pop and make it look more realistic. I was having a little bit of issues with the highlighting and shading of her chin, which kind of shows at the end that I wish I paid a little bit more attention to. But if you want the shading to not look as crass, I would say, like as textured, you can always take the same color. So like, let's say the color that I use for the background and the base of the nail, and you can cover the shading, and that'll help make it look a little bit less textured. But learning curves, I haven't done a realistic nail in a hot minute, so we're getting back into the vibe. I'm now just using my imagination for where her boobs would be and her collarbone, just because the picture that I'm using is a reference from one of her different shoots, but I'm kind of inspired from the one shoot that I've seen her do, which was kind of like a hentai shoot, which I thought was super cool and would be super fun to do some 3D nail art to that. So I'm just doing the final touches of the highlighting shading, and I'm taking this awesome Cosmic Cat Eye by Nails by Dev for the background, and of course some 3D gel art for our cool little hentai octopus. I made Ashinikko matte. The background is with a glossy top coat, just so that when I do the final effects for the octopus, I can kind of make it look like he has a little bit of wetness to him and also a little bit of wetness to her, so that it'll really pop and add a cool effect. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Like if you had a good time, comment for more nail art ideas, and subscribe if you want to see more. Bye guys.